Hello everyone, it's me, Clayton. I just finished watching Sailor Moon Eternal, starring the cast in both Japanese and English that you might remember from Sailor Moon Crystal. And it's directed by the director of the third season of Sailor Moon Crystal, Chiaki Kon. Now, Miss Kon seems to have been spending a lot of her time doing Netflix anime that has seemed more like slideshows rather than having actual animation, such as the recent The Way of the House Husband. But when it comes to the legendary Sailor Moon franchise, she comes back with arguably some of her best work to date. In my eyes, it's a film that happens to basically fit an entire arc of content into two separate films in a way that actually makes a whole lot of sense, even if some parts do feel a little rushed. But when it comes to the stuff it needs to get right, it gets them absolutely right. But let's get to the story, shall we? The story is, after the third season of Sailor Moon Crystal, a solar eclipse occurs that brings forth the Dark Moon Circus. Basically, there are these circus-themed villains who are all putting the Sailor Scouts and even Mamoru, aka Tuxedo Mask, into their dreams, supposedly making their biggest dreams come true, but in reality putting them into ungodly nightmares. And that's up to the Sailor Scouts, including Sailor Moon, Chibiusa, and the rest, to find their inner strength, essentially reclaim their powers after they're taken away, and find out the real culprit who's behind the Dark Moon Circus to begin with. And that's all I'll say about the story without spoiling anything. One thing that I'll say is that one film I ended up enjoying significantly more than the other, mainly because of how the film is paced. The first one basically happens to set up the villains. It introduces the problems that all of our Sailor Scouts have to face and gives them separate, mini villains or, accomplices for them to take down. And that's the case for Sailor Moon and Chibiusa, Sailor Mercury, Sailor Mars, Sailor Jupiter, and Sailor Venus throughout the first movie. Basically, it gives them all about 15 or so minutes to go through their dreams and for them to take down their specific underling that the Dark Moon Circus has for them. Some of those can feel like they're a bit rushed, like it sets up their dreams and desires a little too quickly for us to really get too invested in them. It might have actually worked better in the manga. But the animation and the excellent fight scenes happens to make up for a lot, especially considering how you might remember the production values were a little mixed in the original Sailor Moon Crystal series. Not in this movie, though. The movie budget certainly helps this one out a lot, and even though the visuals aren't, Demon Slayer movie material, they're still, generally good for animated film standards. And Part 2, in my opinion, has the better overall pacing, and it also reintroduces the outer Sailor Scouts. Sailor Uranus, Sailor Neptune, Sailor Pluto, and Sailor Saturn. And I definitely think that I appreciated their storyline a bit more, especially with Sailor Saturn rapidly aging in a way that doesn't involve the mystical pregnancy trope for once. Plus, I do find it kind of funny how this movie happens to handle its circus-themed villains better than a shonen that's literally based on the circus, like Karakuri Circus. Jokes aside, the Dark Moon Circus villains are definitely pretty fun, especially since some of them are animals that can turn into humans. There are these 4 girls known as the Amazonas Quartet that definitely have a lot of unique powers and have some great chemistry with each other. And there's even this evil old lady who kind of reminded me of the evil old lady from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stardust Crusaders. But considering Sailor Moon, I think, came out first, maybe she was inspired by her. Who knows? Other than the pacing, the only other problem with this movie that I really have is really just the main villain. Basically, she's this evil queen who knew Queen Serenity from back early in the day, and I do appreciate that they do connect her to the inciting incident of the series in a way that does make sense in the series lore, but there's really not a whole lot to her character-wise, and she's really just there to fulfill the final battle circumstances. Thankfully, the visuals and action scenes do work out very well, while still keeping in the emotional connection and keeping in the character dynamics that we'd expect from the series at this point. So, as a whole, Sailor Moon Eternal is basically everything you'd want as a Sailor Moon fan. It's colorful, it's cute, it's full of amazing action scenes, the characters are all likable, and it happens to fit an entire arc of manga into a reasonable time frame. That's plenty good for me, and that's why I'm going to give Sailor Moon Eternal an 8 out of 10. See you next time.